Hey and welcome back to Vanquish. We're in part 7 now, and in this part we will be wrapping up Act 2 of the game. And it's at that point where we're sort of wrapping up the easy days part of Vanquish. Because while I can't remember exactly where the game's difficulty spike tends to jump in, I do seem to recall it being Act 3 where the game starts to get a lot more intense, like in terms of both the length of the act and the amount of shit the game throws at you to handle. And so this is where I kind of see as like the ending of the easy days, which I will say, like, my scale of difficulty is kind of inconsistent. It's kind of all over the place, and I'll be first to admit I'm really not that great at games in general, let alone like third-person shooter games. I think I've been over my lack of skill already in this playthrough. But, you know, it doesn't hurt to reiterate it so people know where everything stands. But yes, towards the end of the last part we had a part where we were scaling uphill, and if you look right here we have another part where I'm going to be scaling uphill. Although I will say this section in particular I remember being a kind of cool uphill scaling section because it feels like you're taking on all the enemy guys in tiers. So like you can knock out a couple of them that are like lingering at the stations and then move up a bit, and then once you've done that you can, you know, take on the next tier and scale up a bit again. And it's one of the things where it feels like you're continually making progress. Like, although there is still some hide behind cover, duck, all that malarkey, for the most part it feels like you're making constant progress. It feels like everything is a step in the level rather than, you know, let's let this drag. And I suppose part of the intensity from that comes from the fact that there's shit falling all over the place. So it's not ever like you're just wasting time. You're always either shooting a guy, dodging a guy, getting dangerously close to a guy like I am right there. But yeah, you do need to be careful. Although, thinking about it, the way I describe the uphill climb, this probably varies, like your impression of these levels varies depending on the kind of player you are, whether you are the more careful type or whether you're the idiotically dive in front of danger type like I'm kind of being here. Like, that's the thing with me playing games. I don't know whether it's like a temperamental thing, like whether I am in different moods or different mindsets at any given moment. But I have this habit of like sometimes being very hesitant with games. Like, I'll be overly careful, I'll waste a lot of time just lingering and, you know, just generally playing it safe. But then there'll be other gameplay sessions where I'll be the complete opposite. There may be a lot of crossfire going on, or like say in a platformer there might be a tricky section or something, and I'll just like lose all my inhibitions and just dive straight into the hazard. Sometimes with it paying off, other times not so much. But yeah, it's just one of the things that when I'm playing games I tend to lean to one of either extremes, and it's weird. It's just a habitual thing, I guess. It happens. But yeah, I will say this is the part where I don't actually have much in terms of like notes and whatnot for this, and it's also my first recording session after a little while, just because I've been busy with like the Sony-thon and whatnot. I haven't really had much time to record my own stuff. So this part will probably end up becoming a little bit more casual and maybe off topic than a lot of my solo LPs tend to be. And that is one thing that I'm trying to ease up on as someone who makes Let's Plays, because I don't like overly off-topic playthroughs. Like, I think there comes a point where if you've got the entire game playing and you're talking about nothing to do with it, then you kind of think, why do you even do it as a gameplay video? Why not just make a podcast or something? But I'm starting to learn over time that it doesn't hurt during repetitive sections just to think, you know what, I've got nothing for this section, so let's talk about something else.
Activate the engine and have Elena handle the rest. Elena, can you hijack this thing remotely?
Negative. The jamming signal is encrypted.
Damn. Guess this one's up to me.
Sam, what are you doing?
Watch and learn.
Elena has good cause for concern here, given some of the other situations Sam has ended up in. It's stuff like this that's why I do really think the cinematography in these cutscenes is really cool, because, like, look at that. Like, yeah, we have had Sam fall on his ass again, which, you know, that's becoming a running thing here. But the camera work there, the cuts used, and, like, just the sense of action, it's pretty fucking cool.
Like an asshole.
But yes, that's the first of these two missions down, and I seem to recall this section being one that on my first playthrough took me a little while to clock on to what I'm meant to be doing. And that's because it starts off like just a regular carry on shooting the dudes sort of thing, but then once you get past the door and there's all these different things shooting from up above, and yeah, there's a bit more to pay attention to. Like, you've got the objective, and then you've also got bigger enemies coming down, and it's like, do I focus on these guys as though they're a boss, or do I focus on the cannons up top, or the other machine guns and shit that's all going on? Among, like, all the regular mooks, like the Gorgy things, that's the red dudes, and whatnot. So yeah, it's a kind of thing where you got to pay a bit more attention, and there's also one part where if you do waste a bit more time, which thankfully I'm not going to do in the playthrough, I did keep this about as brief as I reasonably could, but there is this one line from Burns where he just goes on this same line of dialogue about there's no time to just spray and pray or something along them lines, over and over and over. It's like if you've played Shadow the Hedgehog and you know that line of like, you know what they say, the more the merrier, the way that sort of voice direction goes. It's a similar kind of deal, that he just gets stuck in this kind of loop. And when it comes to voice direction in any game, that's something that becomes a bit of a pet hate for me, when a character is literally just repeating dialogue. Like, I get there's this whole thing of you've got to cue the player off to something that, like, they might not have clocked on what they're meant to do, and having a character say something about, you know, there's a certain thing you've got to shoot or a certain target to achieve or whatever. Like, I get the purpose of that, but when it's just the same line over and over, like, if it hasn't communicated that message to the player in the first place, then it probably isn't going to communicate it when you repeat it. So the ideal approach there is to either have multiple lines that get a bit more obvious over time, or to kind of have the option to have that character repeat the line if you get closer to them, but also have maybe other characters who say other things that might tip you off a little bit better. Or just be a bit more obvious, but that's a kind of thing where you can also leave that up to human error. Because chances are sometimes when games do that, the line itself might actually be clear enough for a normal person to get it, but you might just be having a bit of a dumb moment and not really picking up on what they're trying to persuade you to do. Which that can happen. Like, I think it's just a thing that I know in particular. I have stupid moments sometimes when playing games where it's like, there's quite an obvious thing to do, and like, it might make sense immediately to a lot of people, and then there's me being a complete idiot. Then I manage to feel like a complete idiot when I'm done as well, which I suppose that is kind of part of the course. There's a few things like, I seem to recall one particular puzzle early on in Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, a game I've been playing a bit of recently, where it's like this illusion puzzle. So you go through these certain gates and it moves part of the geometry, and the game does a pretty good job of setting you up to know that that's what's going on. Like the first one you might struggle with, but then once you've picked up that's what's happening with these particular gates, then like the clues are there. You kind of can see that each of the following puzzles uses these like mirror things to trigger an illusion. And like, you know, once you've got the gimmick in your mind, you know every puzzle through that particular environment is going to be some variant of it. And that's fine. From a game design perspective, that's great. It teaches you what to do and then lets you get on with it. However, there's complete idiot me who has done several of these puzzles at one point, then encounters a section toward the end of that area where you need to go up to a certain higher section and there's no stairs to get there. And I don't know what to do. I'm wandering around, I'm like retracing my footsteps, seeing if there's any other routes I've missed, generally achieving nothing. And it wasn't until like maybe 15 minutes later and I realised that actually there's this mirror thing that can create the illusion of stairs to let you get upstairs. And that was pretty special on my part. Probably the best way to put it. It's pretty fucking special. And there's similar sort of things in that particular illusion section where like maybe took me a second or so to queue on. Like there's also another part where you've got to unlock a door from the inside so that when the illusion comes off and blocks off another part, then you've already got the door unlocked and you can go straight through. Things like that. And that is a pretty cool puzzle.
Shit.
Better take it down or our reinforcements aren't coming! Bravo, aim for that red core! Don't stop shooting till you're out of ammo!
So this is the section. What you got to do is you've got to take down all the things that are going to damage the reinforcements that Burns just tipped us off about. And so this is the section in particular I mentioned earlier, and that was the line, don't just spray and pray. So basically what you got to do, we saw in that cutscene that the trouble our team are having right now is that reinforcements are coming and they're getting shot down because there's all this firepower coming out of that building. And so it's this case of balancing out, killing off these guys on the floor with flamethrowers who can be pretty damaging. Like if they hit you, I seem to recall they do quite a fair bit of damage, but also achieving the mission, which is shooting down the guns at the top. And I seem to remember in this particular take I did just focus a fair bit like on clearing out the ground. So we see a little bit more action taking down the big guys, and then after that I'll be shooting down the guns at the top. But I believe you've got to take down the guns there and also the laser section, which is, you know, fair enough, because if we're going to get reinforcements in to help us, they're not going to be much use to us if they're shot out the sky. Just a little word of advice, if you're ever in a situation where you might need to call on help, if your help is going to get shot down or disabled or put out of commission for one reason or another, they can't help you. Like, these are big guys, but it still does amuse me how relatively pathetic they are when you're in the AR slow-mo thing. Because it's like, he's got all his attacks and different shit he can do, but he's in slow motion, so we can get a few cheap shots in. And yeah, like, I know it is the main objective of the game, but like, if you think about it in terms of like in universe, it really is a cheap shot. You know, you can slow yourself down, slow time down around you, and once you've done your Zawaldo and you're in stop time, they've had their attack slowed down, and that's your shot to pile on him, which, if this were a realistic fight, that would be unfair as fuck, but it's a fun mechanic, so take it or leave it, I guess. But hey, Although, speaking of which, those guys, they do have their huge gunshots which completely fill the screen if they come too close. And in those scenarios, you do have to be careful, because, like, I think those things are either one-hit kill or they do enough damage to you where they leave you so vulnerable they might as well be one-hit kill. So, no matter what other things you may be focusing on, like, if there are any of those guys alive and on screen, you should probably, like, keep yourself on the move. And again, that is where Vanquish strives, in that you can keep yourself moving. As long as you don't overheat, you can get out of the way of things pretty effectively. So it is mostly on you to keep an eye on things. And that's one thing like I can praise this game for, is it very rarely feels like, ever since the patch at least, it rarely feels like you get a cheap shot. With the exception being sometimes if you come out of like an in-engine cutscene. Although that might have been patched now, because I think that was another thing where it was like not really adapting to the different frame rate that well. Like sometimes the invincibility frames as you came out of an in-engine cutscene would speed up faster than they should have. And so where you'd usually have a moment to do a dodge roll out of the way, it just didn't really give you that in the original version. Like the original PC release, I mean. But yeah, if you can't tell, I have been having fun with the rockets when it comes to shooting down these lasers and also shooting down the machine guns earlier. And that's because they take down those things pretty rapidly. Like, you can just use like the heavy machine gun or even the AR to just shoot down as they open. But it's much quicker to just take out the rocket and, you know, pummel them in a few hits rather than going through the motions. And let's be real here, it's just fucking satisfying having a big gun that you can shoot things down with. Big guns in these games tend not to be the most practical in regular combat, but goddamn they're satisfying. Like, I think of the weapons from Halo in particular. Like, Halo has a big rocket launcher, and in multiplayer that could be some dumb stupid fun. Like, if you see a squad of enemies close to each other, then you can get like a multi-kill in one shot, and that is really satisfying. And also a similar kind of thing with the Spartan laser, because the Spartan laser, it wasn't quite as effective for the quick shots because you have to charge it up before you can shoot, but it does still have the satisfaction of, if there's a bunch of guys a bit too close together, then guess what, they're all gonna rip. Like, maybe that is a more big way of looking at it, but you know, in a team deathmatch or Slayer in Halo, that's kind of what you're aiming to do.
Don't just spray and pray. Concentrate your fire, damn it.
And that's a game series I've been thinking of going back to at one point, like maybe not for a recording or anything, but just to give another go, and that is Halo. Because I remember having a lot of fun with Halo back in the day, like particularly Halo 3. And that was around the time when I was properly into the multiplayer and whatnot. Like, I never got good at it, but I spent a hell of a lot of time playing Halo 3. And I played a bit of Reach when that came out. Like, Reach was a fair bit of fun in its own right. Like, I was sort of petering out of Halo at that point, but I do remember, like, during the beta, playing a fair bit, and then when it came out, having a good few online matches. I do remember there being this one quirk during the beta that amused me though, in that somehow or other Bungie had managed to make the standard frag grenades OP as fuck. I seem to recall them having like a huge launch radius, and they did a lot of damage too. So you'd throw a grenade out and then you'd like murder everyone in the area, which thankfully they fixed up by the time the final game came out.
Well done.
All right, let's get these troop transports on the ground and head for the central building.
So much for your ride on the merry-go-round, son.
Old Burns is still talking down to Sam as much as he can, because If he can get a little jab in, he will. And now for more plot.
Why did you attack? We were supposed to be cooperating.
Do you take me for a fool? Cooperation is mutual exploitation. We have merely exploited you first.
What are you saying?
I am saying that our spirit of cooperation may be a little less spirited. It is time to move on.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me next time where we'll be making a start on Act 3 of Vanquish. See you then.